You have got to get anchored in the realization of one power and be able to see everything else and brush it aside. And so it is that when you get there, you can see why it is only a hypnotic suggestion that there is a power apart from God, or a selfhood apart from God, or a condition apart from God. Do you see that? Now just think of what would happen in the world if our group were all becoming independent of world conditions, world diseases, world sins, world fears. See that? Think what would be happening, because each of them would quickly have a practice around them. And each of those would be manifesting it. Do you see that? And so it would be. Now, it is only in proportion to our individual fruitage that we'll ever have patients. Because they're not going to go to anyone that isn't showing forth a measure of this. And then it's only in proportion to their demonstration that that practice grows and becomes a student body. Because out of 100 people, there's always going to be 30 want to know how it happened and why. See? They become students. It is like if I give a lecture and there are 500 people there, when we have a class, there's 100. There are always bound to be that 20% or 30% who want to know why and how it happens and more about it. Now the answer to everything is that we have not been doing enough conscious, specific work, and we have not been giving recognition of the fact that we're not dealing with person, place, or thing, but there's hypnotism, and we have not been treating hypnotism as if it were the norm of flesh or nothingness. And that is where we have to get busy. I think next week we're going to have 2 or 3 more children cases to take on. And the more of those we take on, the more practice we're going to have in handling this, because those are the ones that are tough because they involve a change of consciousness. And we have to stick with this until until hypnotism breaks and their consciousness, which is there, their true consciousness, can come through. It is possible that on this coming trip, that the work, wherever I go, will center around this one single point. Because there's just no use of me traveling around the world, talking, and having so few people able to carry on after I leave. And there's only one reason. This is the point they're not catching. They think there's something beyond this, or they think there's some miracle way of making contact with God. You can't make contact with God through hypnosis, because that's the only sense of separation there is. And sitting around meditating in the midst of the hypnosis, there's nothing breaks hypnosis except facing it and realizing its nothingness. Nothing breaks it but that. Mystics throughout the years have had conscious contact with God and still lived in their hypnotism. And it's because the world has never acknowledged one power. Never at any time. Never at any time. There have been a few people, like Lao Tzu, Buddha, I don't know so much about Jesus, but John anyhow, who caught some vision of one power. But it died with them. It died with them. Mrs. Eddy caught it, and a lot of those around her caught it for a good while, but it died with them. I think that's the hypnosis. That's what brought on Adam and Eve's expulsion. The hypnosis takes the form of two powers. And as long as you see two powers, you're under the hypnosis. When you see only one power, the hypnosis isn't operating. As long as you can look at any form and say there's neither good nor evil, not even a power of good, there is only good itself, but not as a power, as a condition. Only then is the hypnosis broken. Now, it's easy to say it. It's easy to repeat it. It's not easy to demonstrate it. Because it has to be practiced daily, hundreds of times daily, until actually the hypnosis breaks. On the other hand, you can intensify it by over-practice, by making it seem as if it were a power that you had to break, instead of having to break the belief within you that it is a power. See the difference? Go at it as if it were a power and it'll lick you. Go at yourself as if you were overcoming any belief that it had a power, and you'll master it. I know that it leaves a question. Yes, but where's God in all this? As long as there's hypnosis, there's a sense of separation from God, and that's why there's no spiritual demonstration. And the spiritual demonstration only begins to take place when that hypnosis is broken. See that? Now, most of the ancients used both powers of good and evil. And by recognizing that you could use both powers, they made themselves free of either one. And they could have whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it. Because it wasn't something they were victims of. It was something they could control. In other words, they were taught, first of all, the nature of individual being. I am a being. And now there is a power of good and evil, and I can use them. And so they made use of the power of good and evil. In other words, they understood that there is a mind. And they could imbue the mind with good, or they could imbue it with evil and keep themselves perfectly free of it. They wouldn't suffer from it because they saw it as a substance out here that they were using. It didn't touch them. So it was that they surrounded their places with what they call good influences, and evil couldn't penetrate it. Or, as they did in the cases of the tombs, they surround it with the power of evil. And say only death awaits anyone who breaks through it. As if they were leaving a monster there to guard those tombs. And the minute they were violated, it acted. But you see, all they were doing was putting mind around it. Now, the minute you think out as mind and say, here, I'm going to put an envelope of mind around those flowers so that no law of mind or matter can enter. Disintegration, age, decomposition. You would no doubt find that those flowers would stay that way for a year. They wouldn't age and they wouldn't wither. You just envelop them in a layer of mind. Now, one person would come along and say, oh, you put a power of good around them so nothing could happen to them. The next person says, oh, you put a power of evil around them so nothing evil could get through. And it's got to fight off evil. But actually all you did was put a protective power of mind around it. That's the individual when he has use of the power of mind. And that's what was known in the ancient days. How to use the power of mind for good or for evil. But it really wasn't using it for good or evil, it was using it for a specific purpose. And it acted as good or evil in accord with the way you looked at it. Now, if you were going to surround a mummy with it, and keep it from decomposing or being stolen, you might say a power of the angels was protecting it. Somebody else come along and said, no, I'm going to set a devil up around it so that nobody can get through and get at it. But really, it didn't make a difference whether you put good up there or evil up there, it was still protected. Whether you called it God or devil. Because after all it was mind. Now, when they went into Tutankhamun's tomb, and most of them died that went in there, you can see that there was neither good nor evil. Because if you were speaking to the Egyptians who put it there, they'd say, you see, we put a protective power of good around here so that no evil could enter. But if you talk to the people who were killed, they'd say, oh, they put an evil power around it to kill us. But it wasn't good or evil, it was protective. See that? It's the way you use mind. Now, it is identically the same thing. There is a you. See that? You aren't mind, you have a mind. You are endowed with a mind. Soul, mind, and body. Just as you have a body, so do you have a mind. Now your body is pure. There's not a thing in your body that can harm anything or anybody. So that nothing really can happen to your body except something first enters your mind. Your body would just go on being a state of matter if it wasn't that something enters your mind, some belief, some theory, some doctrine, some teaching, and you begin to manifest whatever is in your mind on your body. Well, so it is. Mind itself is pure. There's no such thing as an impure mind. But if you take into your mind 2 times 2 are 3, 4 times 4 are 12, you're just going to build up a corrupt mathematical mind. But the mind isn't corrupt. It's the knowledge you have fed it that's erroneous. The mind is going to keep functioning in accord with what you have fed it. If you fill your mind with life, truth, love, harmony, peace, joy, cooperation, so forth, that's what both your mind and your body gives off, because there's a you behind both your mind and your body. See that? Now, here am I, and I have a mind and I have a body. And I have the function of watching my mind and my body. In the Masonic language, that's tiling. You tile your mind and you tile your body. In Christian Science language, it is, stand porter at the door of thought, admitting only such conclusions as you wish manifest on your body. See that? Stand porter at the door of thought, admitting only such conclusions as you wish manifest on your body. But Masonically it is said, tile your mind. and your body. And be sure that your tiler stays awake. And who's the tiler? I am. Therefore, I must tile mind and body. And I must admit nothing into my thought that defileth or maketh a lie. Now, there's no way to keep it out if the door isn't tiled. Anything goes in or out of a mind that's lethargic, apathetic, unattended. Therefore, I have to stand here and know the truth, and the truth will make me free. And the truth is that I embody all power. I have been given dominion. And there is no opposition to that, no opponent to that. So every suggestion that comes to me, I cast out. Thou couldst have no power, unless it came from God. You have only the arm of flesh, nothingness. We have the Lord God Almighty. But see what conscious thinking that involves. Now, that was why in the ancient days teachings survived for hundreds of years. That's why Masonry was an active force in public life. That is why the Rosicrucians were a powerful force in active life. That is why the White Brotherhood was an active force. Because there were students taught who dedicated their lives. And they learned what was and what was not. And being dedicated, you can bet your life they stood porter at the door of thought. They tiled. Do you see that? It is only as generations go by and people get into that lazy habit, usually when there's no danger threatening, that they relax their rod, much like our tilers do today in Masonic lodges. They hardly really tile. Getting by them wouldn't be too difficult if a fellow really wanted to get by, because there being no actual danger to the order today that they know about. If there were, they'd stand and tile there as if the devil were trying to get through. But they don't. So it is with us. We don't recognize what the enemy is. We don't even recognize that we have. How often you hear people say, well, there's no use in me forgiving my enemies. I don't have any. As long as you feel that way, you're on your way to destruction. Because everybody has one enemy, and that is hypnotism. And only the few know it. And the few that know it won't do anything about it. And so they become victims of it. They do not tile their minds or their bodies. They don't recognize that there is an I who has a mind and a body. And that they won't stay pure by themselves. They'll take on the complexion of their surroundings. In human experience, you have mind. And mind is a pure substance. And you imbue it with truth or with ignorance, with good or with evil, and it functions that way.
Use the tape illustration now.
In the same manner as this tape is taking down this message, and it's taking down such a message of truth and purity that when you hear it, you'll probably get a thrill from it. The very atmosphere and aura of this message will go into the tape, and you'll feel it. But on the other hand, you could use this tape for some obscene message, and then when you hear it, it'll make you feel sensual. And it's the same tape. All right? So it is that when your mind is imbued with truth, with love, with spiritual peace, that anyone coming into your atmosphere feels that. But if you fill your mind with some obscene book and then have somebody come into your atmosphere, you'll bring out of them a sense of sensuality. Because they can feel what's going on in your mind. You can't hide that from anybody. They don't know, they're not mind reading. They're just feeling. They're just feeling. And if they're at all sensitive, they'll immediately act with sensuality towards you. On the other hand, if you keep the Spirit of God alive in you, the Spirit of truth and of the one power, the minute they come in, they get into a sense of peace. Or, another way, if you have a problem that's worrying you, and you worry and fret about it for a week, and somebody comes into your presence, the first thing you know, they're scratching themselves. They're uncomfortable. They want to get away from you. You say, why? What did I do? You didn't do anything but fill your mind with troublemaking aura, consciousness, awareness. Now, in the human picture, mind is imbued with truth, or mind is imbued with error, or a combination of truth and error. And so you have good happening to you once and error happening to you the next time. But that is because you fail to recognize that behind mind and body there is I. I and my Father are one. I have been given God-given dominion over my life, my mind, and my body. And that dominion is given to me through truth. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Therefore, as I maintain in my mind the idea and the ideal truth, I am that I am. I and my Father are one. I have meat the world knows not of. I am the bread of life. I am the wine. I am the water. I am life eternal. I am the resurrection. As I maintain that in my consciousness, there are no other powers. And so when suggestion comes to me of limitation, of lack, of sin, disease, and death, I am there to say, you have only the arm of flesh. Suggestion, nothing. And then I have dominion over my affairs. But if I allow the mesmerism of the world to plant untruths in my mind, or sensuality in my mind, or lack and limitation in my mind, that's what I respond to. Now, I am the one who has been given dominion. I am the one who has been given dominion over everything that is. But I have to maintain that dominion consciously. And the only way I can do it is to realize that all God-given dominion is embodied in the I that I am, and not in anything or anybody or any thought external to me. Then I can declare the mind of man with its good or evil is not power. It is illusion or hypnotic suggestion. For I alone am power, or I alone have God dominion. Then I know the mind of man, for good or evil, is not power. The thoughts of man, the hopes and ambitions of man are not power, for I alone embody God power. See that? But that's a conscious, specific, hourly practice as long as temptation comes at us. And then, even when it isn't, we mustn't take it for granted that it can't come back again. That is the one question people ask. Why is it that this practitioner who has done such wonderful work all their lives, all of a sudden has this happen or that happen, or poverty or disease or... there's too much belief that what they know, this truth, is a power over error. Unless you can tile your mind and body, be an absolute tiler of it, and let nothing in that defileth or maketh a lie, and there's only one thing that defileth or maketh a lie, belief of two powers, or belief that there's a power of God somewhere, when actually there is no need of power, for there is only the one power in operation, so you don't need any power. It is in operation as the power of God. There's nothing opposed to it. And so it is that you have to recognize there's no power opposed to me. There's only a state of hypnotism claiming power, and my recognition of its nothingness destroys it. Now that is why anybody who is engaged in an active world work, especially in the old days, had to know these things, or they weren't entrusted with those positions. They had to know how to protect themselves from world influences. Now, they met with enmity. They met with the enmity of the church. They met with the enmity of governments. Wherever men were self-seeking, they found enmity. Had they fought the church or the government, they'd have been destroyed, and those who fought the church and government were destroyed. Those who know, I'm not fighting a government or a church. I'm just realizing a universal mesmerism without power. They walk right through the world, and the world doesn't even know they're walking. Don't you see that that's been the secret of the infinite way, that nobody knows I'm walking up and down the world with this dynamite? The infinite way is dynamite to error. Nobody's fighting it. Nobody's opposing it. Walking up and down the world unseen. See that? But if I weren't careful, if vanity got in, we'd all be wrecked. The minute I would let them meet me at the airport with a reporter and put it in the newspaper, and we'd all be wrecked. Because the minute the world would detect what the infinite way is, okay? Sunday, December 29th. I will speak first to the group that is hearing my voice and hearing these tapes. But I will remind you that first of all, there is no use of trying to teach this to anyone until it has become so much an embodied part of your own life that you're demonstrating it. Then, when you're demonstrating it, and you know that you are, and you're making this a daily routine of life, then of course you can begin to teach it, but be careful that you teach it only to those who so hunger and thirst after truth that after you impart it to them that they'll eat it and drink it. Because I can tell you in advance that while this would transform the world, as it has transformed my life and made it, I have found in all these years that very few people are willing to follow my example. They would love to equal the demonstration if only they didn't have to go through the steps leading to the demonstration. But even for the sake of the demonstration, they will not break through inertia to do as I do and do as I teach. And it is for that reason that I have taught this only to a few, and to most have found that they will not follow it. True, it's an effort. The Master says the way is straight and narrow, and few there be that enter, and the reason is that while everyone wishes they had health, wealth, and harmony, they don't quite wish it hard enough to really want to make the sacrifice that's necessary to attain it. So first of all, make up your mind that what I'm giving you here, I'm giving you because of my own experience, and therefore I'm in a position to say it will do wonders for you. Then secondly, don't try to impart it to anyone until you are so convinced that it has transformed your life, that it shows forth in your life, and then impart it only to those who so hunger and so thirst that after you give it them, they'll eat and drink. Now, what I'm saying is this. The only good that can come into our experience can come in as an act of consciousness, a conscious act of consciousness. Truth is, but it doesn't operate in your experience until ye know the truth. Then the truth can make you free. But until ye know the truth will still be the truth, but it will not make you free. Now, in our ordinary human life, and more especially in your experience with students, you have found that this is true, that when you tell them to get quiet, they tell you that all manner of things begin to go through their thoughts. And of course the implication is that they have no control over that. They can't stop those thoughts going through their mind. And they're thoughts that they don't want. Fear thoughts, sensual thoughts, sick thoughts, poverty thoughts, death thoughts. All those thoughts keep going in their mind the minute they get still. And no matter how they try, they cannot keep those thoughts out of their mind. Now, of course, in the human world, you know that that's why we have everything from rattles to televisions. Because while we're playing with our rattles or marbles or dolls, or while we're playing baseball or football or looking at television, we don't know that the mind is telling us all of those fear thoughts and sinful thoughts and disease thoughts, because the other things are blocking them out, but they're going on just the same. And so we indulge in outer activities to keep our inner thoughts from revealing themselves to us. And the minute we stop the outer activity, that's when the things that are in the inner thoughts begin to talk to us, and we become aware of them. Now you could stop it instantly. Just go out and turn on your television. And the more active the program is, let it be a crime picture, or let it be a circus picture, or let it be a football picture, the more active it is, the less of evil and erroneous thoughts you're aware of. Now turn it off and get still and just watch the nature of the thoughts that pop into the head of the human being. Now, the purpose of spiritual reading and spiritual meditation is to attain a mastery over thought. And in a great many cases, it eventually takes place, but never to the full extent, unless a program such as I will outline is followed until mastery is obtained. Now what I'm going to say to you is the truth of being. And it's a truth you've read 1,000 times in 1,000 places. But it's a truth that you can't demonstrate, except in proportion as you begin the practice of this truth. Now we call it practicing the presence of God. But what is God but I? Therefore, it's practicing the presence of the I. So let's practice it. Now, sit back in your chair and get a comfortable position with the feet flat on the ground, the back erect, and the hands passive in the lap. That's merely to be absent from the body. It has no occult reason. It has no mystical reason. It has just a natural reason to take the strain off the body so that it doesn't intrude into your thought. That is why if you're hungry, go and eat a bite and stop the hunger. Don't eat so much that you overload the stomach and can't consciously think. But if you're hungry, eat a bite and stop it. If you're thirsty, take a glass of water or ginger ale or whatever you like. But insofar as possible, get free of any back talk from the body. Now let us start with the word I. My name is Joel. I, Joel. I, Joel, am an individual. I, Joel. Where did I come from? Well, I know this. I came. I am here. I exist. I know that. I exist. I know by inner feeling that I am not a separate entity in the world. I know by my life's experience that I have a source, something which feeds me with these messages of truth, which constitute the message of the infinite way. I know that even before that, there was an inner source of some kind. Well, I don't know whether it was inner or outer, but anyhow it was a source that operated intuitively, so that when I was in the business world, it led me to make intelligent purchases of merchandise. I know that I was guided in my purchases. I know that there was something always that said, this is beautiful, this isn't so good. This is right, this I shouldn't have. I know it guided me in many, many steps in my business experience. It also guided me in selling, how to make harmonious relationships. I know that. I've never believed otherwise than that there was something that was guiding and directing me. Let's call that God. And then because it is wherever I happen to be, whether I was buying merchandise in Europe or selling it in the United States, or whether I was in a banking office borrowing money, whatever it was that guided me was right there with me. It often got bigger loans for me than I humanly could have expected. So I know that there is something that is always with Joel but is greater than Joel. And both through reading, studying, and meditation, I have learned that I, Joel, am one with whatever this source is, and we'll call that the universal I, God, the universal self, the infinite, eternal, immortal self, the invisible self, feeding the visible self. I know as I study the teaching of Jesus Christ that I find confirmation of that. If I'm connected with the tree, then I bear fruit richly. But if I'm not connected with the tree, I wither and die. That means I am the branch. But I'm connected with the tree. But the tree is as much a part of me as the tree is part of the branch, and the branch is part of the tree. They're one. So I'm part of God, or I am connected with God, or at one with God. Therefore, all that the tree is, I am. All that the tree hath, I have. And so, I'm ultimately led to this. I and my Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. The very place whereon I stand is holy ground. And this tree, or I, is that which feeds and clothes and maintains and sustains me and makes me what I am. All right. Continuing with the teaching of Jesus, we are ultimately led to say then, thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me, for I and the Father are one, even though the Father is greater than I. Therefore, by the grace of God, or by my oneness with God, I am the life, the truth, the love. I am the way. I am the resurrection. Now this I, Joel, which I am, I have a mind and I have a body. Now hear that, and hear it well. I, Joel, have a mind and I have a body. That mind and that body play important parts in my life. I never want to be separated from either my mind or my body. For I have need of these. The mind and the body are instruments through which I work, through which I move, through which I think, through which I know. Therefore, I am the life of my mind and of my body. I feed my mind and my body with the bread of life that I am, the wine of life that I am. I feed and govern my mind and my body. I enlighten my mind and my body. I direct my mind and my body. Now, if my mind could talk back to me, it would be greater than I am, and it would have dominion over me, and I would be helpless and have to take whatever it wanted to feed me. And if my body had dominion over me, I might end up in jail. My hands might want to steal. My body might want to rape. Can you imagine letting my body do what it wants? No, it has no right to want. This is December 26th being continued. And you will notice that I'm not mentioning the word God or Spirit, that I'm working now from the standpoint of mind with a small m, but in the sense of universal mind as it is individualized by you and me. It is for this reason that Jesus said, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Because we aren't dealing now with God or Spirit. We are dealing in this lesson with you and the harmonies and the discords that affect your life. Now, of course, there would be none if it weren't for a universal belief accepted in the mind of two powers, good and evil. But do not think for a minute that just because you have been taught that there's only one power, that that's what you are demonstrating, because you are still demonstrating the power of good and evil. And you're going to continue to demonstrate the power of good and evil until, bit by bit, little by little, through a conscious activity of your own mind, you actually demonstrate that evil is in power. Now, a practitioner can demonstrate this for you to the extent of healing you of a specific ill or evil condition, but they can't change your life because you can go out and get sick the next day again, or get unemployed, or get poor, or get sinful. It is you who must know the truth that makes you free. And unfortunately, there is a law of mind which is called inertia. And because you have not been taught how to use your mind consciously and specifically aimed in certain specific directions, the power of inertia will let your mind go on drifting, accepting good today and evil tomorrow, and good the next day and evil the next day, and a little of this and a little of that. And your mind is not going to stop drifting and dreaming, except that you, by a conscious, specific, persistent effort, are willing to seat yourself down every day and break the law of inertia. And specifically go to work in what we have called, in the old Christian Science days, protective work, which we today call daily meditation, contemplation. Actually, rightly understood, the old Christian Science protective work and our daily period of contemplation work is the same thing, because both are aimed at this, that there is a world of appearances and that we are being made the victims of laws of good and laws of evil, and that this work is aimed specifically to set aside the material laws, so-called laws, beliefs, theories. These periods are aimed at specifically setting those aside. Come out from among them and be separate. But coming out is it's like stretch forth thy hand. You've got to do something. You can't sit there and say, oh no, there's no error. You can say it from now to doomsday, but the hand won't respond until you stretch it out. And you can sit around reading these books from now to doomsday. But as we had in the Halico class on prayer, the prayer of action, unless you start forgiving your neighbor, unless you start handing out food and clothing and raiment to those who need it, unless you begin being a force in your community for good, an active force for good, participating force for good, you can pray from now to doomsday and you're not going to get any result. None whatsoever. You have to be a light unto your world. And for you to be a light unto your world, you have to do something. And whether you do it in the form of consciously praying, no evil shall come nigh this consciousness, because there's no power in form. No power in germs, no power in infection, no power in contagion. And thereby help that part of your community which responds to this knowing, and then help the others on their level by helping to feed them and clothe them and house them, or give them good government, or set an example in public integrity and so forth, commercial integrity. Unless you're doing that specifically, mouthing prayers is not praying. Yes, the old pun had it, praying, P-R-E-Y-I-N-G. Now, at this period of the world's history, you are not going to get the world, even of the Infinite Way students, to really sit down every day and do this specific work the way it should, because they are gripped too much with the mind mesmerism, inertia, blind faith that there's a presence or a power. So it has to be that a few must begin and devote hours of their days and nights, not to their own good, except so far that their own good sets an example for the others. I only care that our little group demonstrate health and an abundance of supply for the example that it is to the others, to show what the effect is of this particular type of conscious knowing. Now, evil in and of itself, regardless of its form, mental or physical, is not a power. But evil is going to be a power in the human world as long as inertia permits the continuing of the belief that it is power. And until you consciously know and ultimately demonstrate the non-power, it will continue. Now, if you, in your experience or the experience of someone in your family or among your friends or patients, can sit down and specifically know the unreality of presence and power to so-called good and evil, you have no demonstrable proof of it. And it remains academic. And it remains of none effect. It's like philosophy. All the philosophy that's taught in all the universities of the world doesn't change a single thing for anybody. Because no matter how true what they're knowing may be, it's nothing more than passing through their mind and passing an examination paper and getting another degree. And that's all the purpose it serves. Nobody applies philosophy to the principles or to the daily life. Now, to reveal, as Scripture does, that you're only thrown out of Eden because of the belief of good and evil, hasn't done anything for the world. Because there it stays, right in the Bible. But when you specifically apply the principle of neither good nor evil in form or effect, and watch it disappear in front of your eyes, and all of a sudden find your health better, or your supply better, or your happiness better, or your peace of mind better, because after all, happiness doesn't depend on money. It doesn't necessarily follow that we all have to have lots of money because we have lots of spirituality. It only means we have to have peace of mind and peace of joy. And now, when you demonstrate that then, and really prove why there is no evil. Evil isn't a power. Now you've set the stage for a greater unfoldment of that same thing. Remember, we're still not talking about God. We're still talking about you. And we're still talking about you consciously knowing the truth. And we're still talking about you exercising God-given dominion through the truth, which is that good and evil have no power as form or effect. That all power is within me. Do you see that? Then we begin in these small ways to demonstrate. But remember, they're almost inconsequential, except in the same way that the Wright brothers' 57 seconds was inconsequential. Actually, it was of tremendous consequence, because without it, we couldn't be flying 1,000 miles an hour today. So it is. If we can't heal a cold, future generations will not heal the sins and diseases of the earth. We have to begin with the demonstration over the little problems that come to us, then gradually those that come to our family and patients and students, then gradually the bigger ones of capital and labor and government, wherever we happen to be, until it's demonstrated. Now, why can we leave God out of this picture? for this reason. As far as God is concerned, God is functioning as the creative, maintaining, and sustaining principle of all existence. And there isn't anything further that God can do beyond that. That's what God is doing. God is the creative and the maintaining and the sustaining principle of this universe, and it has been doing it from the beginning. Nothing has been added to this world since the beginning. Nothing's ever been taken from the world. And as we read now in these kiddies' science books, they have finally made the admission, the physicists have made the admission, that matter is indestructible. That makes matter spirit. That makes matter God, of the substance of God. Because only God is indestructible, immortal. And another thing I read in the science book of the 8th grade, matter never had a beginning and can't have an ending. Matter can't have a beginning and it can't have an ending. It can only change forms. In that 8th grade science book says that. Well, what is God? Indestructible, without beginning, without ending. Then matter must be one of its forms. See that? And here we've been denying matter, saying there is no matter, and at matter, when matter is an indestructible substance that you've got to learn to live with. You've got to learn to live with matter and love it, because it's indestructible. It can change forms. So if your body wants to die and get burned up in a furnace, you know what that science book says? It weighs just as much after it's burned up as when it's in full form. It doesn't even lose weight by going through the fire. See that? Indestructible, incorruptible, without beginning and without end is matter. Why? Because it's mind. And mind is spirit. And spirit is God. And spirit is its absolute, and mind is a form, and matter is a form. And they're all indestructible. But what good does it do to tell it to you? None, any more than it's good to tell you how to paint a picture. You won't paint one. Practice, practice, practice. Paint 1,000 of them and tear them up. Then they begin to be something. So it is with this work. I know that all the truth in the Infinite Way writings is truth. And I know that someday we'll demonstrate them to the nth. We haven't yet. I myself haven't touched, I've said this, my demonstration is equal to 1 grain of sand on all the oceans of all the seas. And our students is less than that. Why? Because we are not consciously, specifically sitting down with our principles the way an engineer would do, or a mathematician would do, or a nuclear fission scientist would do, and putting in 8 hours a day of working at it. Yeah? Now, the principles in the Infinite Way are principles. He performeth that which is given to me to do is a principle. There is a He within me that's greater than he that is in the world. But nothing happens until, with every task that I'm given, with every day that I open my eyes, that I realize there is a He within me, there is a something, there is a presence, there is a power within me that performs every function of my day, that operates to govern every circumstance of my life, whether in time or space. and if I keep living that long enough, that he jumps out. And at first it does little things. Pretty soon it goes before me to make the crooked places straight. It's another principle.